YouTube, Awesome Writer here. Welcome to my review for Mighty Morphin issue 8. So this was our conclusion to our sort of Under the Dome arc, where Zedd had a good portion of Angel Grove trapped in this sort of fake utopia he created, and the Rangers have just broken in, and the Green Ranger was involved, and there was all kinds of stuff. So we wrapped that up, and where we left off, you had some of the Rangers fighting Zedd on the ground, and he basically made an offer to free everyone and make everything go back to normal if they just gave him Zordon. And then while that was going on, Tommy and the others were fighting in the mecha, and that was going on with some giant putties and whatnot. And so the Rangers obviously turned down Zedd's offer, and so they start fighting, and Zedd starts fighting Candace, who I forget her Eltarian name, I keep forgetting it, but I'll probably never learn it at this point. But all of them start fighting, and Matt's kind of standing by, and you kind of quickly realize that Matt and Grace aren't really brainwashed by this. I wasn't sure how that was gonna go. I didn't think they were brainwashed, but I thought maybe given Grace's different way of thinking from Zordon, that maybe she actually bought into this idea that there was this utopia under this dome, but I guess they were just kind of playing undercover the whole time, and Matt's having a hard time standing on the sidelines, and basically, that's Grace basically, but Grace is basically saying, you know, wait, now. And so she's waiting for him to get involved in the fight because Tommy's struggling and the other Rangers are fighting. And eventually he contacts Billy, who, if you don't remember, you know, helped create the Green Ranger powers and has been assisting them unbeknownst to Zordon this whole time. And when he calls for assistance so he can get the Dragon Zord out there, Zordon finds out that Billy's been working behind his back, and he's understandably upset, and it's a really interesting scene and dynamic, especially after last issue where there was this kind of nice bonding moment between Billy and Zordon when Zordon was kind of talking about his past. And like, Zordon here is understandably upset. Like, I totally get it. Billy's been working behind his back on things Zordon specifically has been concerned about, but at the same time, I just don't like Zordon right now in this story. Not because I think the writing for him is bad, but just as a character, he's just so, like, his way or the highway, so self-righteous. He's like the Power Rangers version of the Jedi Council if it was all one person. It's like, Power Rangers don't belong to you. You don't set the only rules like that can be or ever will be for Rangers. I think mainly I'm just annoyed at him for what he's done with the Omegas. Like, yeah, they took Draken, but they also said that they needed him. That's a rant for another time. And the bottom line is I just don't like Zordon in this. Again, just as a character, I find him to be very close-minded. It's definitely opening up interesting potential there with Billy being outed now. But basically then Matt gets the help. We get this cool Dragon Zord, like Godzilla fire breath sequence, and they win over there. And Zordon, I almost said Zedd. Zedd winds up escaping, and he actually takes Candace with him. And then everything's kind of wrapped up and everything's saved, and we end on this montage. It was kind of like the end of a film montage where it's Bulk and Skull's like YouTube show or whatever it is, and it's kind of a montage of voiceovers. So if you were seeing this in a show, you can kind of picture the different scenes with voiceovers and like interviewing people based on their experiences with this whole dome thing. And Matt's kind of under question, because I almost forgot that Matt's identity is out to the public, but Matt and the Green Ranger are under question for their loyalty after he outed himself and then said, you know, oh, I'm here for the people, and then he pretended to be with Zedd and then he wasn't. It does create kind of a mess, which I think could lead to some interesting stuff as we go forward. But at the same time, I kind of wish there was a gap between the Green Ranger reveal and this storyline, just because, like, yes, it does create an interesting situation with the public trust of the Green Ranger, especially given the prior history of the Green Ranger and the public, but it just makes it a little bit too quickly messy for me. It's like those two things were kind of smushed together, and I feel it just kind of jumbles the whole interesting aspect of the Green Ranger being public and then him following Zedd, and it happened so quickly. And I don't know, I liked aspects of that, but I thought it was just a bit of a mess. And like, as predicted, the whole Zedd creating a utopia thing didn't last very long, and it wasn't really real. But something that was interesting about that was Zedd said, I never really cared about getting the city or Zordon. I just wanted to show you what it could be like without Rangers, but it's interesting, especially with the implications of whose character might be. So there definitely was some interesting stuff in this story, but also stuff that felt kind of half-baked in regards to the Green Ranger. Like, I don't know, it had all this build-up to him. He reveals his identity, and then we have him sort of working with the bad guys, but it's undercover, and it just all kind of happened quickly. I feel that there was more story there. There could have been more story. Two stories were separated a little bit. It just felt a little bit jumbled for me, but maybe that's just me. And then we just kind of end on the cliffhanger of, you know, Skull saying he misses Candace, and we show her in Zedd's fortress. Now, you might have thought I forgot this part because I haven't mentioned it yet, but I wanted to save it for the end. But this issue opens up with another flashback of what I'm calling Zordon and friends to their early days as Guardians. And we've opened up almost every issue for the last while with that. And I feel like this was one of the most extended sequences. They're in what will be Rita's palace as Vandora's palace, and they find this Zeo Crystal shard. And we get some really interesting Power Rangers lore about the Zeo Crystal. Like, one of them says, like, it was rumored to be just literally a pure aspect of the Morphin grid. And then I think it's Zordon that goes on about this legend of this dragon that, like, coveted, or not coveted, but he, like, kept the grid and the powers away from people. And then this legendary knight, Zeon, or Xerox, or Xenon, girl of the 21st century. She's like, Cetus Lapidus, dragon! Morphin grid is for everyone! And so there's that legend there, and it says that he used the Zeo Crystal to, like, stab the dragon and end it. And, like, the others are dismissing it. It was like, oh, science, that's a fake legend. I'm like, what are you talking about? You live in the Power Rangers universe. Why are you dismissing it? After that legend, they talk about, like, this warrior that wielded the Zeo Crystal. And I think it was Zordon that said, like, Tartar on your teeth. But I keep getting the names mixed up. One of them is like diaphragm and the other one is like tartar. And so he says, like, one of them, I think it's Zardarus. He's like, you could wield that power and then, like, protect everyone if you wielded all the power. And he kind of sets it up to think that one of those guys, that being I think Zardarus, unless I'm mixing them up, the one that didn't visit Zordon, one of them visited Zordon last week, not that one, but it sets up that the other one might be Zedd in the future, because it says, if I'm ever taken by a Clipter, he says he'd strip the skin from my bones, which is what Zedd looks like. So they're hinting pretty hardcore that that guy ends up being Zedd, unless it ends up being a major red herring. We'll have to see. I think that's definitely, like, interesting potential. I mean, who knows? Like I said, it could be a red herring and they could take a sharp left turn. But at the same time, if this is the backstory they're setting up for Zedd, I think that's actually really interesting, and I'm really interested to see where this goes, especially with that thing Zedd said about, like, this is what a world without ranges is like, and how it ties to the Zeo Crystal, and maybe bringing the Zeo Crystal into more stories in the future. I think there's a lot of interesting potential set up by this, but I thought this was a really solid issue. I liked it a lot. It was a really big issue. You know, we ended this arc under the dome. Billy got outed for helping the Green Ranger. We got some interesting stuff with Zedd, some interesting stuff in the past, some interesting stuff with the Zeo Crystal that potentially propels us into the next storyline. The only thing that really bothered me about it, like I said, is I feel some of the stuff as far as Matt's involvement in this story just feels a little bit jumbled coming off of his big arc before, and I feel that could have been streamlined a little bit. But just as far as this issue goes, I thought it was a really nice and big issue with, like, big developments that had me excited to see the next storylines going forward. And this issue didn't even factor in or mention the Imperials, so I'm also interested to see how the Imperials and sort of that side of the story with the Power Rangers comic is going to tie into all the stuff going on here and the Zeo Crystal. But what did you guys think of this issue and all the developments? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you can get my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.